I think if you ask most Android phone users what phones have the best cameras on the market, I think a lot of people would probably assume the Pixel 7 Pro and the brand new Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra. In this video, I'm going to show you guys a whole bunch of samples, both photo and video, and I'm not just going to show them to you. I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to zoom in, and we're going to pixel peep a little bit, and we're going to see if we can tell if one phone has a significant lead over the other. We're going to start things off though with the ultra wide, and then we're going to work our way up from there and end with video. So throughout these videos, the first photo will be the S23 Ultra. The second one will be the Pixel 7 Pro. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about camera specs here because they don't really matter, right? What matters is what does the photo look like when you are done. So it says 0.5x here. That was just shorthand. I believe 0.6 is accurate for the S23 in this instance. So here is the S23 Ultra inside. Lighting, not incredible, but okay. And what you can see here is there is a little bit of grain in the darker areas. Overall, though, detail for ultra wide does look okay. Nothing incredible. Does a pretty good job here with the light. It's decent, a little bit grainy. Going to the Pixel 7 Pro, you will notice things are a little bit cooler in tone. There is still a little bit of grain in the darker areas, but it's not quite as bad. Detail is similar. Let's see. Can we read Pixel 7 Pro there? Let's go back to the S23 and let's zoom in. Yeah, I mean, detail might be slightly better on the S23, but all in all, color temperature is a pretty big difference, and then the grain is a big difference. Stepping outside into some much better lighting, I think this is a really nice picture. The sky is very vibrantly blue, as Samsung does tend to do. Let's zoom in here to the middle where the details should be at its best. And yeah, this looks pretty good. We can read the name of the road there. We can almost make out the name of the church that I'm looking at. Let's skip forward. And yeah, again, okay, it's a cooler temperature, at least to my eye. The level of contrast seems to be very, very similar. It's a little bit less saturated. It's not a Samsung phone, so that's typical. Let's zoom in. Detail, again, might be a little bit worse. That road sign is a bit harder to make out, but both are looking very, very good. And then lastly here for the ultra wide, I really like all the contrast in this tree. The colors are really nice and vibrant. Zooming in on this one, really nice detail in there. Let's go to the Pixel where things again are just a little less saturated, a little less warm than the other, and detail looks really similar on this shot. Jumping to the primary camera, now I've left the settings as they come stock, so we're not doing any 50 or 200 megapixel nonsense. This is stock. So if we zoom in here and look at some of these details, we do some pixel peeping on the S23 Ultra. You know, things are pretty detailed and things do look pretty nice. Let's look and see. None of this obviously is readable, but we can kind of see what it looks like. Jumping over to the Pixel, and I might have been slightly differently framed, so we can't really compare this one-to-one, but hey, that's more detail. Unequivocally, that is more detail on that lettering. So in this instance, the Pixel with the more detailed shot, but boy, do they look similar. They look very, very similar. Hanging out here inside the house with the lighting being a little bit worse, let's zoom in. Look at the detail, look at the individual strands of fur. Maybe you can see them better on his neck there. And let's go forward. These are really, really similar looking shot, guys. Really, really similar looking shots. And the details are really similar. Maybe the Galaxy has a bit better detail there, but man, it is close. Moving back into that same corner, let's again zoom in and see what text is legible. Let's look Pixel 7 Pro, Pixel Watch, LTE, all that stuff. Wear OS, almost readable there on that box. Color tone is what it is. Let's jump over. Is that a really similar shot or what? Let's zoom in here and read the text. And the detail's really, really close. Maybe a bit better detail for the Pixel once again. How about portrait mode? Okay, so we have the S23 Ultra here, and I actually really like the look of this shot. I like the portrait mode on the S23 on the Samsung phones quite a bit. For Google, the blur is a little bit less aggressive, but they both look pretty solid. I think I'd probably pick this one just because the blur is more aggressive, and I like that. Portrait mode on the dog. I probably need to vacuum the rug a little bit here. This is the S23 Ultra. Again, very aggressive blur, a nice warm color tone there. Moving over to the Pixel. Less warmth for sure, and the blur still looks pretty good. I think this is going to come down to your subjective preference. Stepping outside into some lower light, and we have the S23 performing fairly well. Let's zoom in here and see what kind of details we can resolve on the tree, as well as underneath here where there is some additional shadow. What does the sky look like? Jumping over to the Pixel, and it's pretty similar, right? It's a little bit less warm, but I think if we look here at the bark and at the underside here, is that more detailed? Or maybe they just boosted the shadows more? Boy, it's really, really similar. It's a different look, but they both look very, very good. Another low light shot here with obviously Rose moving to kind of demonstrate what kind of blur you're going to have from moving subjects with the S23 Ultra, and pretty similar for the Pixel. Same old story, right? The Pixel is cooler and less saturated, but the details in the low light look really, really similar. So for all the talk of nightography from the S23 Ultra, and honestly, I still think the Pixel is going punch for punch with it, potentially winning in some of these. And then here we are in some very low light, and let's zoom in where we have some available details on the grass, and you're going to see that once again, the Pixel might be slightly more detailed, albeit cooler in tone. These cameras, again, they go shot for shot with their primary sensors. It's really going to come down to your subjective preference. I kind of like the way that the sky and the shadows look on this tree here. It's a little bit too blown out, a little bit too bright here for my taste, a little bit brighter here as well. This is, though, subjective preference. What about astrophotography mode? So this is with a 4-minute exposure on Samsung's device. Let's zoom in and get a look at the stars available here. And then on the Pixel, I don't remember what the exposure time was on this. It's whatever the default is, and you can definitely see more stars. Although you're like really bright here in the middle, and that's much more even here. What about macro photography? You can get up nice and close on both of them. Here you have the Galaxy phone, and then the Pixel phone looks a bit more detailed to me, right? You can see the texture there just a little bit more, but both do look really, really nice. A bit of grain going on here on the Galaxy that you don't have here quite as badly. Looking at the back of my Z Fold 4, look how nice and detailed that is. That is such a cool thing to be able to do, and the Pixel does it just as well. So now we're going to look at a few samples at 3x. Now, when I say 3x, what I mean is 3x on the S23 Ultra and 2x on the Pixel. And the reason for this is because this is what they default to. There is no 3x button. Granted, you could just pinch to zoom in, but I don't think people are going to do that, okay? So we're going to look at what they intend on you doing shot for shot. So this is 3x telephoto on the S23 Ultra, and of course it has a dedicated lens for this. And if we zoom in here, we can see pretty decent in detail, a little bit of grain, but overall pretty solid on the Pixel. This is 2x digital zoom, and if we zoom in here, you should be able to see that, yeah, okay, so at 3x versus 2x, and if you zoomed in even further on the Pixel, this will be equally true. The S23 Ultra is going to have the better low or mid-range zoom. If we go forward here, and we're actually on the wrong one, let's go back. This is the Samsung device, and again, this is typical Samsung stuff, right? This is really saturated. It's got decent detail, but it's a very saturated photo. Going over to Google, and there's some darkness there that's a little bit maybe overdone. I keep saying that it's cooler. I'm going to stop saying that eventually because it's true every single time. And of course, if we zoom in, we are just not going to get as much detail from a digital zoom versus an optical one. Going back to that church, 3x again. Hey, look, there's the moon up there. That's pretty cool. Let's zoom in again. The detail on the bricks. This looks pretty nice, guys. This 3x zoom is pretty solid, and the 2x digital on the Pixel is just not going to be able to keep up with an optical sensor. Now, when I started testing further zoom levels, things got really, really interesting. So I kind of did some things I didn't plan on doing. I was going to try and just do this at the zoom levels that they basically recommend, like I talked about earlier, but things were weird. So I had to kind of break my own rules. So this is the S23 at 5x. Okay, so it's a 3x sensor, but cropped in digitally a little bit further. So you would expect that this is going to look a little worse than the Google shot, which is using an optical 5x zoom. No digital cropping needed. And I think most people would agree that that is the case. The Pixel is going to be a bit more detailed. But when you jump up to 10x, okay, so now we're using the 10x optical zoom on the Galaxy, and you compare that to 10x on the Google Pixel, which is using, again, a 5x sensor, but then cropped in, you would expect this to be a much better shot, but it's not. They're very, very similar. The S23 is slightly more detailed if you look at Spider-Man down there in the corner, but it's not a big difference, guys. It's really, really close. And again, we're going to jump over here to my amp. This is the Samsung. This is the Google. They are incredibly close. It's only when you jump up to 30x that Samsung has a pretty sizable lead. This was very, very surprising to me. Now, if we go back outside into good lighting, here is the 10x, which is, again, optical for Samsung versus the 5x optical for Google. Both are very, very impressive. But man, 10x on the Pixel is blowing me away. And you can see that exact thing there. This is 10x for the Pixel versus 10x for Samsung. Yes, Samsung is a bit more detailed, but it's not the gap you would think that it would be, right? It's only when you jump up to 30x, which is what you have here. The further those zooms go, that the difference really starts to be noticeable. 30 versus 30. Okay, yeah, Samsung's got a big lead there. And again, 30 versus 30, Samsung has a really big lead. And the Samsung has the ability to zoom in at 100x, which does look terrible, but it's 100x. And if you look at how far away this thing actually was, that's it way back there. It's still pretty impressive. So looking at the selfie cameras, the Galaxy phone does a pretty good job resolving detail in the beard, hair, and all that good stuff. Jumping over for Google, I do feel like I look a little bit more pale than I think I am in real life. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. They both look good. Portrait mode, they both look pretty good, but they both fail the hair test either way. Not shocking results no matter what, though. As with all of my prior video tests, we are filming at the settings that are there out of the box, which in this case is 1080p, 60 FPS, no super stable, nothing fancy or weird like that at all. This is the S23 Ultra because I didn't say that already. How does this look? The details, the sounds, the stabilization, all that stuff, let me know. And likewise, the Pixel 7 Pro filming at 1080p, 30 FPS, which I think is what I said on the last one. Either way, that is true. They're both 30 FPS. How is the stabilization, the sound, the audio? Can you hear my koi pond over there? How loud is that? The colors, the details, the rows, all of that stuff. What do you guys think? Interestingly to me, the video is really, really close, but this entire time I was saying that the Pixel is cooler. It's cooler. In video, it's warmer. Really interesting little feature from Google there. But either way, after all of that, what conclusions have I drawn? Well, first off, if anybody was expecting this phone to just mop the floor with the Pixel, that just simply did not happen, okay? When you're talking just shot for shot with the primary sensor, more often than not, the Pixel's probably taking the better photo. For portrait mode, I think I lean towards Samsung, but that's a subjective preference. For the ultra-wide, I think it's probably Samsung there as well. In lower zooms, I think that's also Samsung, but when you get up to higher zooms, unless you're going above 10x, Google hangs right there with it in a way that I honestly am shocked is true. I don't have much to say about the selfie cameras. They're fine. I don't take selfies anyways, but they're there and they're both totally fine. But you got to keep in mind, you got to like weight the primary sensor the heaviest, okay? So even though, yeah, Samsung does win in some categories, the primary sensor that you're using most of the time, if Google's winning that one, which it felt to me like maybe just a little bit they were, I don't know. You might lean towards the Pixel. Either way, they're both phenomenal cameras. Granted, the Pixel is a little bit cheaper, so you got to factor that in as well. They're both really, really good. If you're buying either one to be like a photographic machine to be a camera for you, you're probably going to be happy either way you go. Guys, thanks for watching. Affiliate links to both phones in the description down below. More S23 content coming very, very soon, guys. I'll see you on the next one. And until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.